Welcome to the Operation Move podcast. My name is Zoe. This week we are talking to Nicole Avery. She is a 3:11 marathoner and she did that at her first marathon in Melbourne. And we've been friends for a long time because we met through blogging. It seems like a really long time ago. And her website is Planning with Kids, which is all about setting up all the systems that you need so that you can spend more time doing all of the fun things. She is a mum of 5 and has just launched a new product through a crowdsourcing campaign, which is called Adapt Drinks. And we get into that. We get into some of her training and how she manages to juggle everything and all sorts of stuff. So I really hope that you enjoy this as much as I did.
The one thing I noticed about it, I didn't find it demotivating or anything. I actually was quite happy to get out and do it. But it took away some of the joy of running, because you'd be running and then it's like, first of all, I can't go past a 5K sort of bubble. So I've got to make sure I stay in my 5K bubble. And then it's like, normally, especially on my recovery days, I won't look at my watch and I'll just run at any pace and just run for I might run out to 5Ks and then run back on a track 5Ks, and I wouldn't look at the time. But you with only having an hour, and I'm quite the rule abider, it's like, oh my gosh, I've got to get back. And then sometimes, if I was having a day where my legs were just heavy and I was tired, it's like all of a sudden I've got 7K, I've got 7 minutes and I need to be home, and I'm a bit further than where I'd like to be. And so you'd start to have to really push an easy run on the way home to get home within the time boundary. And so I found that fairly stressful. So I think that was the biggest benefit to me once that was over, is that you could it felt like you had this luxury. I could run, and you became really conscious of every time you stopped at a traffic light, or if you had to stop to get a drink or go to the toilet, it's like, oh my gosh, that's going to go onto my lapse time. And people have seen me, I'm going to run for an hour and 2 minutes. It was really quite a big mind thing more than a motivation thing for me. So I was actually just super relieved when that was off, because it felt like I had a bit of freedom with the run, and I could actually just enjoy it for the beauty of, especially the recovery runs. I like to go out there and just take my time and just feel quite free with it. So that was good. But I was super lucky to have a treadmill. So on my workout days, which tend to be Tuesday, Thursday, I would do as much as I could in that time, and then I would come back in and do a 5K cool down or something on the treadmill, and that was pretty lucky. But it did super help having a plan. Once I knew we're getting into that hour limit, one of the people from my running group offered to put out plans at a pretty good price for people. So I picked up one of those because I didn't want to have to think about it, what was I going to do? I just felt like there was so many stresses and pressures around that if I could take one of it off. And she wrote the plan, designed it, so the workouts would fit within an hour. I didn't have to do any of the math behind that. She'd done all the math and knew that with warm up and cool down, it would all fit within that hour. And that was really, really useful. And I hadn't had a running plan for a while, and it just reminded me why they're so good. They are really, really good. And I could see the progression, whereas sometimes I tend to make it up as I go along myself. And it's felt so much better to have some structure. And for me, in such a time of uncertainty, having that structure with my running was actually just something nice to hold on to. It was really comforting that I could just program it in my watch. It was like a nice little comforting security blanket. At least I know this, and it's all working and it's all good.
The drinking actually makes it worse, and it's this
so true.
And I've noticed the same thing too, is I will often have more wine after after I've made dinner for the kids, and I've ticked off all my boxes of all the things I have to do. I've done work, I've done stuff for the kids, and I'm me time. Now I'll do this. But a lot of times I find on the one hand, if I'm having wine with my mum or whatever, that is a really engaging experience. But if I'm at home, it's kind of more like a disconnection, just an escapist thing. And so, and particularly I think it's probably gotten more pronounced with all the COVID stuff, because ordinarily, like, running takes precedence, so I would tend like not to drink that much during like a training cycle. I'm a much better abstainer, so it's so much easier for me to just like be completely off it. And so like probably last year I would only ever have alcohol like after I'd done a race and like completed a training block and be like, oh, yay, celebrate, or, at a birthday or whatever. And so it had this sort of like natural kind of restriction. Whereas then you go into this sort of year where everything's off and it's really easy to kind of go, well, like, what does it matter if I have like a few glasses of wine and then I have to run tomorrow? Like, it's not like I'm really training for anything at this point in time. And you can kind of like have those justifications to yourself about that. But the thing is it makes my anxiety worse. So the next day I'll be like, oh, like, I definitely said the wrong thing here. Like, that person doesn't like me. I feel bad about this. Like, I feel uncomfortable in this social situation. And it's really easy to not like connect the dots on those things, but it is 100% an impact of having had something to drink the night before. So I've had some good success because for me, a lot of it is the ritual. Like, the ritual is what I find relaxing more so than what I'm drinking. So like, I've had some good success with like when I've been like, right, like alcohol free, and having like kombucha or something like that in that sort of time, because it's sort of like is kind of not something that I would sort of like normally drink through the day. And I know when I went, I did like about a year of alcohol free, and I definitely started with that, with having like, if it was winter, I might have like a hot chocolate, or like during summer, sort of like more like mocktail type of thing. And I think that it's a lot easier to make that change when you get to sort of like maintain the habit, but you're just like swapping things out rather than
there's
sort
so
of
much
like
ritual to having a drink. There's so much ritual to having an end of the day drink that I think that's where people struggle the most with it. If you've got nothing else to have that's, feels similar, people just like, oh, screw it, and have a drink because they don't know what else to do. Like, and it's part of, especially for people who like to cook as well, and cook and drink a glass of wine. It's like, I think there's a sense of lostness, when you don't have it.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that it's and I think it's also, there's like all of the tradition of it, and then there's also, I think that it's become like definitely a thing that I think even more so that women and mothers joke about,
is the wine o'clock,
like, sort of like the amount that they're drinking, and like and I've certainly made jokes about like needing a stiff drink after like having had something to do, and not even always bad. It's even like sometimes it's just like we had for the first time, Riley went like sort of to the shops with her friends for like walk down to the local shops with her friends for like about an hour, and it's just like like having that, all of those sort of transitions and letting go. And it's really easy for that to be kind of like your first port of call. But to me, it also does feel a bit like how smoking used to feel before I quit. Is like, I used to think I need a cigarette to calm down, when in reality, the cigarette is just relieving the withdrawal symptoms that smoking created.
So true. It's weird, isn't it? It is really weird. It's and a lot of it is we talk ourselves into thinking we need things when we don't need them too, which I find super interesting. There's a lot of like head chatter that goes on about what we do and don't need, and what will make us feel, when often in the reality we know it's not going to do that, but we continue with it anyway because it's just a mindset thing that we have.
Yeah, and I think that it has been really good doing some work with some coaches on nutrition and stuff, because you get to challenge some of those things, like, like in your head, you're like, like, I quote deserve this, but it's like also getting in touch with, actually, I don't really enjoy that thing that I'm eating that much, and I feel crappy afterwards. So am I actually rewarding myself, or is this just like a form of like some kind of like, it's, at best it's probably just repeating an old pattern for the sake of it, and at worst it's probably a form of self-sabotage.
Oh, absolutely. And the whole, like, the way running often gets so caught up in um, run so I can eat this, or run so I can do that. Like, for me, it's almost the reverse. Like, the way I look at it is I focus on what I eat quite a lot, because I know what I eat really has a huge impact on how I run and how I feel when I'm running. And so for me, like, I'm
Yeah.
constantly thinking about how can I fuel myself the best so I feel good, because foods do make you feel either really good or really bad. And it doesn't have a lot to do with taste. Often the better something tastes, the worse I find it makes me feel, in the long term, So it is about, sort of separating. I like to try and separate the whole, calories in, calories out thing, because to me, I don't like to think about that. I just like to think about, especially, I have a big day to, like, I have a workout Saturday, and then I've got a long run Sunday. So today I'll make sure I eat plenty of good food, so that I've sort of just got, I don't overeat, but I make sure that I don't skip any meals, and I make sure that I have, especially tonight before I go to my main meal, it'll have just a good healthy size of sweet potato in there to get some really good carbs in, because I find I run a lot better when I've got a good store of carbs, and focus on, and if I want to have some dark chocolate afterwards, I'll have that, but that's not my focus. My focus is getting on all those good things that I know that will make me feel better when I get up for my run in the morning.
Yeah, I mean, Josh often jokes about, like, he's like, what are you making soup? This will change now that it's warming up. But basically, particularly with being vegetarian, like, there's not, like, there is variety, but like potentially, like, there's not as much as if, like, I'm choosing between like a huge amount of proteins that I could potentially use. So like my sort of like go-to when it's cooler is like have some nice curry paste, fry up some tofu, chuck in my veggies, add in some stock, and then like put in like some soba noodles or udon noodles or something like that. That's sort of like my go-to. And he's always joking that that's all I make, and I'm like, yeah, but that's because it's so adaptable. Like, I can change it. Like, it can have more veggies if I'm having less carbs. I can like add dumplings in there if I need like a bigger sort of like meal. It's so adaptable. I like the taste, like, I don't have to think about it, and it takes me like 10 minutes to make. And so, yeah, and it is just one of those things where I do tend to kind of like, switch more to, now that it's warming up, I'll switch more to sort of like salads and stuff like that. But yeah, during winter, it's just like soup, more soup.
I have been vegetarian for about 18 months, so very new to it all. But I would agree with you in terms of that variety thing. You just having, especially, I'm still cooking meat for the family because I have 4 boys, and my husband also likes to eat meat, and my daughter will probably be quite fine not having it, but the rest of them, it's just like, they don't consider it a meal unless it's like a meat in it. I'm really trying to work hard on that, but it's a really uphill battle on that one. But and that took me quite a bit when I changed that in my diet. It did take me quite a bit of adapting. At first, I really tried to be more closer aligned to vegan, but I was finding I was really struggling with just protein intake and just ease of food. I found that I had to prepare a lot more. So I brought back in, so I still have like a whey protein powder. And that's what I pretty much put in my smoothie with a whole bunch of veggies in the morning. And I know I've got this, especially when I've come in after a decent workout, I know I've had a nice big chunk of protein that's timed right, and feels good. But it definitely, it has taken me some time to get my head around mixing up different forms of protein from plant-based source. And I really like it. And I can't ever imagine going back to having meat. It's just something I just don't feel like I want to do. But it has made me have to think a lot more about my macros than what I previously have, I think.
Yeah, I mean, for me, definitely like having the like the vegetarian option versus vegan does make it so much easier. Like I can do like you can do so I get so much work out of like high protein yogurt. It's just like, you know, like it can go in smoothies. I can sort of like mix it up and have it with like fruit and muesli. I can even like put it on like lentil dal, you know, like it just it's so diverse. And I find with the brief periods of time that I have done full vegan is I just found it really hard. Like I think it's really hard to sort of get in the amount of protein without like the carbs really getting really high or the fats getting really high. Like it was just not impossible, but just challenging. And, you know, like if that's something that you're really passionate about, easy enough to do. But if it's not, then, and I think also too, you work out, like I sort of worked out that I just seem to be getting a lot out of the dairy-based protein, which is probably to do with like amino acids and stuff like that. So if I was going vegan, then I might need to look at some amino acids supplementation.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I found the same. Yep, completely found the same with that. And the other thing I found too is that I had to really work hard on my iron, and I still do have to work hard on my iron. I think it's because, you know, probably if I wasn't running as much as I ran a week, I probably would be fine. But it's something that I've had to supplement because I've just found it really, and I was doing a lot of the wrong things at the start too. Like with my veg smoothie with all the greens and stuff, I was having a green tea with it, and the green tea affects the absorption of iron. And so I was, you know, at the start I was mucked up and did a lot of things that weren't quite working. And now I'm way more conscious of making sure I've got good vitamin C foods around it to help the absorption of iron and that sort of stuff. But it's something I still have to watch. Do you have to watch that at all? Because you've obviously been doing this a bit longer. Long time vegetarian.
Yeah, like it's funny, like for like with the iron thing, like come February in my time hop, there'll always be like a couple of posts be going me like, oh, like running feeling so hard, you know, blah blah blah. And then it's like, oh, iron deficiency, because you know, like you lose so much of it through sweat. And it took me like a fair few years to go, okay, like this is what's happening. And I tend to supplement more like through the year now than I have in the past, because I could probably get through a winter period where I'm not really sweating, and, you know, not lose that much iron. But like getting through that summer period would be near impossible. And I remember when I was pregnant, I had non-nutrition anemia just because of my menstrual cycle.
Oh, wow.
So when they had, when I did one of the tests with Riley, they're like, not only do you not have any iron, you don't even have any stores of iron. It's like, okay. Wow. Whereas when I was pregnant with Piper, it was on the low side, but I looked at that as like a huge victory because, you know, it's no longer 0 and 0. So yeah, like I have, I take one of those high dose supplements with vitamin C, and I tend to and just be sort of like mindful of when I'm taking it, so it's sort of so it can get some good absorption. But then the way iron supplements are, like I've also got to be pretty good with all of my fiber intake.
Yes, yeah. And I've actually found taking every second day works better for me. I find the overall effect of just taking it every second day as opposed to every day has worked better, because I find every day just doesn't work so good for me for that very reason.
They have actually found that you absorb exactly the same amount of iron from taking it every second day rather than taking it every day. So.
I had heard that, yeah, which is quite mad. I mean, because that's half the price almost then, really, as well, which is a bonus.
Exactly. It's just so yeah. It is one of those things, and I think particularly. I think that probably generally women tend to be lower on, because I think as a general rule, tend to be like less focused on, you know, like protein than men do. You know, obviously there's exceptions, but
Yeah.
like I guess also men just have the benefit of like they're eating just like more volume of food, so
Yes.
you know they're just going a lot more, really, and so yeah, it is something that I've sort of kept my eye on, and any time like I start experiencing, like for me, like one of the first things is if I start feeling like a teensy bit like hills are starting to get a little bit harder, I'm like, could be low on iron. So because you're just carrying around less oxygen, I guess. So yeah, it has been a thing, but the kids are funny with it. Like they're not vegetarian, and they never have been, but Piper has an absolute love of tofu. Like she'll just like wander past my plate and just like pick it up and eat it. Or she'll make these beef noodles, but I want fried tofu on top of them. I'm like, yeah, no problem.
Oh no, no one's picking my tofu up, that's for sure. No one in my house is really going there with that one yet. I think I was not introducing them to them early enough, I think, is a thing. They just think it's really weird.
Yeah, I think Piper likes it from like a consistency point of view, because in some ways it's kind of smoother, I guess, than what a lot of meat would be. I mean, she's a very keen meat eater, but you know, and they've definitely talked to me before and about like, why am I vegetarian? And, you know, why they're not. And they're like, well, I'm not vegetarian because I love bacon. But that is true. And but it's good, you know, because you sort of start the conversation and that they're aware that I'm making choices and like why I'm making choices, and also like they're aware of, you know, that I probably like when I'm choosing not to have a dessert, like there's a reasoning behind that that's not sort of connected to like how much I weigh. You know, like sometimes I will have this ice cream because I enjoy it, but sometimes I won't because I'm focused on having as much possible that's going to, you know, like fuel running and training, and I don't have room for things that don't have as much, that aren't as nutrient dense, and they sort of like have more of an awareness of that, which then I think is just like good in their general knowledge, in that they can have a good understanding of like, okay, you know, like Piper will often ask me if she's got enough protein in her dinner or you know, and Riley is much more fussy, so like protein isn't her problem, because she's not a huge red meat fan, but she would have chicken and fish forever, no problems. But she at least has awareness of like, okay, like I'm super fussy, but I do need vegetables. Like what are ways that I can like incorporate them in that I'm going to like, and, you know, sort of like do things like she knows that if I make potato soup that there's a whole bunch of other things that are blended up in there that she doesn't notice. Like she knows they're in there, but for ages she'd be like, there's no onions in this soup, is there? I'd be like, no, I don't know what you're talking about. Put onions in there.
I do think it's great though, because we have a lot of conversations. Like it's something that I, you know, really didn't ever have growing up, was like, you know, what's the you know, the makeup of a good meal, and we talk about, you know, some protein, some carbs, some fats, and, you know, lots of veg for the fiber, all that sort of stuff. Having that conversation, I think, at an early age, and not having any fear of any one particular food group, because even though like I don't eat meat, I don't do any demonizing of anything with the kids, and I don't do gluten and I don't do processed sugar, but and one of the things I'm like, sometimes, not so much now, but when I first changed, like the younger one would say to me, oh, but you can't eat that, and I'd say, no, I can eat that. I'm actually just choosing not to because I don't like the way that makes me feel. And so, you know, giving them power that there is choices with the food that you eat, and that there's a whole range of good foods there, and trying not to demonizing any food, because I don't want them to, you know, especially, you know, I'm really conscious with the kids that I role model a lot more in what they see of me than what I say. So I'm really, really conscious to make sure that, there will be times when I will just have like the birthday cake or, or whatever it is that's going on for a special occasion, to show that, there is no, like there's no foods that are forbidden. It's all about what do I eat because it makes me, and how it makes me feel and how I want to eat. Because I think that, to sort of demonize any of the foods when they're so young is just not a really helpful process for them.
Yeah, and like I think that I grew up with like a far more restrictive thing with food. So just because my mum was very, very health conscious and still is, and so it was sort of we were always vegetarian, but it was like no sugar, no dairy for huge aspects of periods of time, like no real sort of takeaway, like everything's homemade, and all of that sort of stuff. And I often went through periods with like no wheat or any of that sort of stuff. And I think that level of who knows what would have happened anyway. Like teenagers are always going to like go off the deep end to some extent. But I went like well the other way in terms of like junk food and sugar and all of that sort of stuff when I was no longer living at home. And I think that at least what I'm going for is by having a more sort of like moderate view with them, then they'll be able to take that sort of moderation once they've left home and all of that, and have it not be this kind of forbidden thing that's really exciting,
Yeah,
so
agree.
That's sort of the theory I'm going with, but like it's so much of it comes down to personality as well. It's like it may have always, I think that I definitely have more of an addictive personality, so it could have 100% happened anyway. And I think that's just why I do abstinence so much better, because it just like completely like takes the question away, and I don't even like, not even having to think about it just makes it so much easier, rather than going, oh, like, will I have this? Like, how much of it will I have? Or like I'll often joke like with love those licorice bullets, and they have like on the bag they'll be like new resealable bag, and I'm like, that's ridiculous. There will be no need to reseal this whatsoever.
Totally relate. I work much better with abstinence. So, like, for me, when I made the decision about, like, that these are the things that I would eat, like, I never feel like because sometimes they'll say to me, like, I don't feel like you're missing out. And I never feel like I'm missing out, because I have so much good food that I like to eat, that this is sort of the, yes, of course, for special occasions, or, maybe Christmas Day, I might veer off it. But I never feel like I'm missing out. This is just what I eat. This is how I eat. This is what I like. It makes me feel good. And it does, to cut out that decision-making fatigue on will I eat that, won't I eat that, it's actually just a relief. Like, I just think, yep, this is what I do. This is how I go. And, like, I have my foods that I cycle through. Like, I'm on this, at the moment, it's like a massive smoothie with a whole bunch of sort of like grated broccoli stems, grated carrot, grated zucchini, and then I add some peanuts in, and, obviously banana and some protein powder. And I'll probably stick on that for 3 or 4 months. And I don't even have to think about what I make for breakfast. That's my breakfast. And I love it. And I could happily eat it all the time. It doesn't bother me in the slightest. But it's one less, and, coming back to, to about how do you fit everything in, to me, that's one of the keys. If I can take out lots of small decisions in my day, because I find sometimes I do get really tired, especially towards the end of a hard running week, that sometimes even making small decisions can take me about 15 minutes. So if I've got lots of things already that this is what I do and this is my routine, or this is what I normally have for breakfast, or this is what I have post run, I love that I don't have to think about it. It's all sorted, and it's just, I can just sort of move from one thing to the next. And you sort of get that domino effect going, that you can just start to kick over quite a few things without having to expend energy on thinking about it, procrastinating about what to do next, or what am I having. They're all sort of made for me. And I know not everybody works like that, so I'm not saying everybody has to. But for me, I found that a super useful way to just like literally just fit more into my days.
Yeah, it does make a big difference. Like the time it takes me to make like one lunch versus like make triple what I need for 2 more lunches. There's no difference in time. Like it takes exactly the same amount of time, and then you can kind of like, particularly with things that are freezable, you can sort of just, like build that up, so eventually you have like quite a decent stockpile of things, as long as you don't freeze white potato, which is something that I learned the hard way in a curry, because like most curries freeze really well, but yeah, that potato is like
Yeah, it's
horrifying.
not good. Yeah, it is. I agree. I've made that mistake as well.
But like dal freezes very well, and and like most of the things that I would make in terms of like curries and stuff like that, they freeze very well, and and it doesn't take much. But yeah, like sometimes when you're tired, I'll either, like, I do not have it in me to sort of make something, so it's either that's my option, or my option is like breakfast for dinner, which I'm fine with.
Same.
It's just like,
I've been known to
I'm
have
just
a
going to
smoothie
have,
for dinner.
like, yeah, it's just like sometimes you just get to the end of the day and it's just like, yeah, that is 100% fine. I'm very, very cool with this choice. And because usually my go-to breakfast is like sort of, I'll have yogurt and peanut butter and like berries and muesli, and that's my go-to.
Delicious.
And I've been having that, like, it's either in that version or it's in more of like a smoothie bowl version, depending on like what I'm doing, which gets much nicer when you get like all of the good fruits this time of year. But and I've never gotten to a point where like I'm like, oh, I'm a bit sick of this.
I'm the same. No, I'm so the same.
So good. So good. So one of the main questions from the Ladies in Run Club was like, how do you manage the juggle between, like work and home and kids and training? And we've talked a little bit about the food, but what are some of the other things that work for you?
For me, like, I've just had to find that I need to get it out early in the morning, because I often find if I don't do my run in the morning, things just happen throughout the day, and then the chances of something occurring that means I don't get to run is really, really high. I also am just naturally a morning person, so I figure I love the way it kicks off my day with it. Like, I always feel more energized when I come back in. And because if I do it early enough, I also really minimise the time that I'm out of the house when everyone else is awake. The youngest is the earliest of the risers, and he may be up at 6:30, 7 o'clock. But if I sort of, my goal generally is to get up in the morning and get out and do my run and be back in the house by not long after 7. So that way, like, it's very minimal impact on when I'm out there. Like, my kids are old enough now really to get themselves ready for school, but I still like to be there and just see them before I go off to school. So I've got a couple that will get public transport and head off to school sort of, 7:15. So I like to sort of just be back. And occasionally there might be some days I'm not, but on the whole, out of the 5 days, I like to be back to sort of see them and that sort of stuff. So I find if I can get up early enough, and that just means that I just have to be really super organised at night and get into bed at a reasonable hour. There's been so many injuries I think I've had, which have probably just been because of not enough sleep and recovery. I went through a phase, when I first started running, that I was going to bed way too late, and so it's sort of running on sort of 5 to 6 hours sleep. And I think the thing is, you get fooled into thinking that works okay, because nothing happens instantly, but it's that gradual build up over time that actually catches up, and then you wonder why you sort of are injured, and it's just, there's no time for your body to recover. So I've sort of got myself this sort of bit of a ritual that I do, and I do like to be in bed sort of lying down by about 9:30, but that means because I've got all these little things that I like to do, I sort of almost have to kick off my bedtime process at about 9 o'clock. So, I'll get my running gear out. I like to do a couple of stretches. I've got a meditation that I like to do. And, I also go around and say, I'll be probably the second to bed. The youngest is in bed first, and then me. And I'll go, I'm such a nana of the house. And then I'll go around and say goodnight to the older kids and just have like a quick little bit of a couple minute chat with all of them before I go off to bed. And then I find that works really well. And in terms of work, I've really found that you have to use sort of your best productive times to get the most out of my day. I've sort of gone from thinking that I need to work really long days to actually thinking that I just need to actually put in a really good few hours. And so I need to maximize when I put that time in. So for me, I'm, as I said, a morning person, but also too, because especially on the days when I've done a hard workout, I know that I don't want to leave my hard tasks to the afternoon because it's going to take me twice as long and I'm going to really struggle with it because I'll start to probably wane a little bit. So for me, getting in and focusing on like the sort of the deep work tasks, so it might be like writing blog posts, writing newsletters, doing my sort of freelance writing work. I'll do that first off in the morning, like once the kids are off and now they're home, when they're onto home learning, or when they were off to school. I'd really try to maximize those first few hours before lunch because I find my productivity naturally has a bit of a wane, just the way my sort of cycle of things work. So try to cut out doing anything that might find me going down rabbit holes on social media or anything like that, and just focus those times then. And I'm sort of pretty disciplined with how I've got my work computer set up, and I'll have my phone away from me and those sorts of things because it's funny. Often people say you seem really disciplined, but I'm sort of disciplined, but I'm not, because like I have things on. So if I do go to Facebook for work, I can't access my feed. I don't have my phone with me. I don't have notifications on my computer. I sort of see this as all ways of setting myself up for success because I have just as many temptations as anybody else. Like, I can easily fall into rabbit holes. So what I try to do is just to structure my work environment so it's sort of as safe as possible and it's as distraction free as possible. And I find that really works for me. Then sort of after lunch, I can then do easier tasks, and especially now with the kids with home learning, or when I find their afternoons are lighter, they're the tasks that I can be interrupted with and it doesn't matter a whole bunch. So if I'm just replying to emails or responding on social media, it doesn't take me so much to get back on track. Whereas if I'm trying to sort of, write a campaign or trying to structure some, so, creating some content for one of my courses, that if I get interrupted, it takes me so long to get back to where I was that I end up losing a lot of time. So just sort of, even if I know one of the kids has just got, the youngest is the one who needs my attention mostly, I really plan to do my hard work when he's like on his 1 hour Zoom so that I've got that time where no one's going to talk to me and I can sort of bang out the most. So with work, that's what I tend to do. And I've got a lot more flexible. I guess COVID's really made me. I really used to try and stick to work hours. But even some days, for example, if I know I've got something that I really want to work on that's really hard, I may even get up instead of running first. I will actually do the work for 2 hours, and then once I've got the kids off to school, then go and get that run. So I will really try to prioritize what is the biggest, most important goal for me today. And I often like to prioritize my running, but work has to come in there as well. So you know what I mean? So it's like if there's a really super hard workout, sometimes if I feel like, I might want to run it in the day because I want to run it in daylight and I can't run anywhere home, I may switch it around. So while I like to have a work schedule that I have and I have a rough routine for my day, I also like to actually look the night before and plan out what that day is going to look like in big time chunks. So yeah, I'll do exercise first, then it'll be some home things with the kids, then it'll be work. And if I have that visualization going into the day, it means I'm way more likely to get off to a good start. And I also always write at the end of the day, I always write down what are my key sort of 3 activities I'm going to do the next day. Because again, coming back to that whole thinking thing, one of the things that can happen if I get to the computer and, especially if I've left it with a couple of tabs open, I can easily get really distracted and work on something that's not important and not really time sensitive. And then I've wasted an hour and I've actually got something that's due. So if I have that list of those sort of 3 key things that I need to tick off, really helps keep me on track with my work. Then at home, I'm a big one. I'm not a believer in multitasking because I feel that doesn't work particularly well. So I don't try to cook dinner and listen to the kids read a story or anything like that. But what I do try to do is just get the biggest bang for my buck for whatever I'm doing. So if I am cutting up veggies, I'll cut up a stack of veggies. So I'll have spare for another meal that, if I'm cooking a curry one night, it's going to be a stir fry later on in the week. I'll cut up a whole bunch at once. And if you prep it well and use sharp knives and that sort of stuff, those veggies will stay really well. I'll grate up veggies for my smoothie and I'll try to make sure whatever meal I make, because of my growing boys that I've got, if I'm making taco meat, for example, I'll do a double batch because then they'll happily get up and eat that like I basically make like a Mexi bowl for breakfast in the morning. So I'll make sure I do double at once, because as we sort of talked about, doing that takes so little extra time that it's worthwhile in the long run for me just to get smart in the kitchen, because I find you can, especially when you run a lot and you need to eat a lot and you've got a big family, like I spend a lot of time in the kitchen. So I try to sort of minimize the time, maximize the output, and I menu plan and I'll do a prep session on the weekend, because while they're not the most exciting of things, they actually just really, really work to save me time and free up time, so I can actually then like be out hanging out with the kids and not constantly just cooking.
Yeah, I mean, even having like a 9 and 12-year-old, I mean, like the 12-year-old, she's not a big eater. Like, she's more of the thing of like, left to her own devices, she'll forget to eat. So I'm constantly having to like try and like force food in her. But the other one is like, it's like a bottomless pit. I refer to like cereal as like a chaff bag, because it's like trying to feed the horse. And like currently at the moment you can get like, I think at the shops you can get like nearly a kilo of strawberries for like $4 or $5.
Yeah.
Which is great for her because she loves them, and like not the most filling thing in the world. So, you still like, I'm always going, can I add fat to that? Like, could we put peanut butter in there? Could we put eggs in that? Like, how do I like bump this up so that she will feel full? Because she will often have what I would consider like close to like first dinner and second dinner, and then it'll be bedtime and she'd be like, I could eat. I'm like, okay.
But having like processes for things like even like the shopping. So we've sort of, in COVID times, we've changed a few of our processes, which has actually been good because I've been able to delegate a little bit more to my husband who's home. And like as a general rule, he's pretty good, but he often just doesn't see what needs to happen. And so at the start of COVID, back in March, when our first lockdown, I sort of started to get pretty frustrated because I think we're all here and I still seem to be doing lots of things. And he was just like, well, just tell me what I need to do. And so we basically set out that Wednesdays is his what we call primary carer day. So that's the day that he gets all the interruptions. That's the day that he cooks the evening meal. And so with our shopping, I tend to do a really big shopping either Friday, Saturday or Sunday, depending on how my week looks. And then he also does what we call the top-up shop on Wednesday. And just having those things sorted out and like knowing that he does that and I do this, it's actually like saved me quite a lot of time. And we also have it's funny, back trying to free up some time to spend with the kids means the kids have to do a bit more. So when I do my big shop, not so much COVID now because the kids can't come shopping with me, but the kids would either have a choice. You can either come to the shops with me and help me do the big shop, because like it's a lot in the, all the packing and unpacking, all the stuff that happens there. So you either come and help me there, or when I get home from the shops, you have to help put it all away, because the putting away process takes forever. And I like to wash up all my veggies and that sort of stuff. I don't make the kids do that. They can do everything else, but put the veggies aside. So we've sort of got these little processes now that work really, really smoothly. Like I basically will come in from the shops now, toot the horn, everyone comes out, unloads the car. I start washing up the veggies. They start putting all the other stuff away. And one of the things that happens with kids is kids often find that they'll try and shove stuff just in the. I like my pantries to be quite organised. I find it's much easier to find the food and they can access things better. But when we first started doing this a couple of years ago, there was a whole thing like, let's just shove everything away as quick as we can, then we can get back to doing what we're doing. So then I would just call them back. Then my natural instinct was just to sort it myself. I thought, no, I'm going to be stuck doing this for the rest of my life if I do. So I basically, I'd call them back. And so now that they know, it actually takes them longer if they don't do it properly, because I'll call them back. Even if it's like one thing out of place, I will call them back and make them put it, like we've got like a lot of containers, so they'll need to open the bag, put it in the container, put the bag in the soft plastic recycling, that sort of stuff. But those sort of things save me a heap of time. So instead of like being a 2-hour process for me to do that shopping, it'll cut it down to sort of like an hour 15, an hour half, depending on what I'm doing. So those sorts of things, especially if you already want to run for a couple of hours on the weekend, if you can sort of carve out some extra time like that by getting other people who have great benefit from what they're doing. Like, it's food for them. It's, it's for everyone. And I sort of remind them that this is for all of us. So we're all got to work in it together and chip in. And I just think starting them young, they've always had to do some smaller things that you can sort of add onto it. And that actually, my daughter cooks a meal one night a week. So that's a night I know that I can get off to bed a bit earlier, because I can do a lot of other stuff around the house and get that sorted, and I can get off. And so I try to make that like on a night before, maybe on a Monday night when I know I've got a hard workout on the Tuesday, so I can get to bed a bit earlier and get up in time and not feel so tired for my workout on the Tuesday morning.
Do you and your husband need to sort of like share days for training, or are the kids old enough now that it doesn't matter if you're both out of the house in the morning?
It doesn't matter if we're out of the house really early in the morning. It's fine. He's not really training for anything at the moment, so he's only running a couple of days a week. But last time when we did train for a marathon together, it was actually really lovely. We would go for a long run together on a Sunday for a couple of hours, and then sometimes we'd actually, because I like to run longer than he does, sometimes he would meet me somewhere at a cafe, and I'll run to the cafe, and then we'd have breakfast and stuff afterwards. So for those of you that got little kids and think this sort of thing never happens, it's so lovely. It does happen at some point, and they even sleep in. So by the time you get home, they've probably not even been up for an hour anyway. So it's a really nice pressure that we can afford to get out and actually even run together if we want to. I really enjoy that. It's lovely.
Yeah, I mean, it's really nice now that mine are that bit older too, that sometimes if I want to run point to point, I will just say this is where I'm going, and it'll be roughly this time, and then I'll just let them know when I'm close, and then they'll come pick me up, get something to eat, and it's really, really nice, because for the most part, because Josh is occasionally done a bit of running, and he has done the Gold Coast half a few times, but it doesn't really make up a huge part of his week. If he goes to the gym, he might run on the treadmill for 20 minutes, but it's not really his bag. And so it's kind of nice when the running stuff and the family stuff is quite separated, to have those little points where they're kind of part of it as well.
Agreed. I do like that. I think it's nice. And the youngest, he's the only ones that show. Actually, well, one of the others, oldest, has showed a bit of interest in running lately. But the youngest has he's wanted to do a park run before, so we've gone and done a park run, which I've just adored. And quite often we'll just do a run on the block together. I'll come back in from a run and I'll say, hey, do you want to go for a run around the block, which is about a 1.5k sort of loop, which is awesome. And then sort of on the older scale now, the 19-year-old, he's just started enjoying get back into running, and the first ISO, and this is the frustrating thing, you sort of, I do all this training, and here's this 19-year-old boy that hasn't run for ages, and then we go on this 5k run, and I was leading the whole way until we got to this downhill, and I'm a bit frightened of running downhill really fast. I'm just not that coordinated, so it sort of really quite scares me. So, and he knew if he sat on me close enough that I would be frightened running down this big hill, and overtook me and beat me on this 5k run. And it's just oh my God, I need to be young again. But it's that sort of stuff.
Yeah, you
lovely.
Can't compete with that testosterone and all of that, HGH.
No. And he also said, he goes, I'd rather die than have let you beat me, Mum. And I went, thanks. So he had a lot more riding on it than I did. I didn't really care.
So, yeah, I've been looking at as Riley, just before all of the COVID stuff happened and park run stopped, Riley had started coming with me, and we'd kind of walk run for the first 2 and then walk the last 3. And I was thinking over time we'd just, do more running than walking, but she likes it because it's a non-competitive environment, very laid back. And so that was really good. But I was also looking at getting her one of those, she's not super keen on riding a bike, but you can get those those big wheel scooters, so they can go quite quick with just being her on the scooter. I thought that would be really cool, because then she could just come with me on easy runs and stuff like that, and so we could spend a bit more time together, because I've just noticed that as she's she'll be 13 next year, that she's starting to just want to have more time, and more time to sort of like debrief after her day, and, just sort of, I think she went through this phase where she was a lot more just sort of like doing her own thing, and, and now it sort of she seems to be sort of coming out there and just like will want to go with me, like if I go pretty much anywhere, and, like that kind of stuff. And it's like, well, I just really want to foster that, but also it would be sort of cool if she could start, like it just saves time to like two for the price of one with that.
Absolutely. But also too, it's actually a really good thing to do at that teenage years, because often they want to talk to you, but they don't necessarily want to look at you face to face, because that's a little bit too intimidating, and it can be a bit too, oh, you're really looking at me, mum, what are you thinking? You were thinking all these things, because mums can't help but think, and our faces show what we're thinking. So it's actually like that side-by-side thing is actually a great thing to do with, like, girl or boy teenagers. I think they often feel a lot safer doing a lot of that side-by-side talking as like the direct across the table sort of talking. It doesn't feel so formal. And I think they also feel like they can easily cut the conversation a little bit and dart it if there's other things, like, oh, look over there, that's like, a bite, it's a little shiny bunny rabbit or something. They can distract away if it starts to feel too intense for them. So it's actually, things like that are really good ways to sort of, keep the teenager talking, because they can really go into themselves. So it's a nice way to sort of have them still opening up to you without feeling like it's all pressure. Let's have a sit down, have a serious chat.
Yeah, exactly. And just sort of, she's always never been sort of super into like the idea of sports or anything. Like, she enjoys it at school, and like this year she enjoyed doing basketball at school because she's lanky enough for basketball. But she hates the idea of doing like a team sport outside of school, where like it's like a competition, and, like the sort of like team expectations or whatever, like way too much pressure. So, it's like anytime they're sort of interested in anything at all in that realm, I think it's so good, because I figure I got into it late, and at least if they're exposed to it a bit earlier, it just makes it that much less intimidating to get into at a later date if they want to. Like, we've got the pull-up bar in the door frame in the house, which they have a play on with some bands, and, like sometimes they'll come out to the garage with me, but mostly they get too bored for weights, so, but they bounce on some of the stability balls, and,
Exposure is awesome at such a young age. That's what I keep thinking. And I think it's, like, and it doesn't matter like whether you run a fast 5K or a slow 5K. I think just getting out the door on a regular basis is one of the best things you can do to show kids that staying active it's not just for times or anything. It's actually about, your overall health and your mental health and all those things. And, my kids will often know, I'll often say, especially if it's, the younger one and stuff, and I'll be like, oh God, I really don't feel like the run today. And I'll come back and I'll make a point of saying, I feel so much better after that. Like, I feel so good. Now I feel way better. Cleared my head, I feel like I've got more energy, because that's, to me, yes, I like to push myself and challenge myself, but I also actually just love, like, even like, on the days when you come back in on like an easy run, and I could have ran as slow as anything, but I've been out there, I felt the wind on my face, I've had sunshine on my back, I feel amazing. And that's what I think is a huge gift in running, and one of the things that draws me back out the door every single time, because there are very few runs that when I come back in, I don't feel better than when I went out. And that's one of the things I sort of really want to try to impress upon my kids. It's not about fast times. It's not about being the best at it, because I'm certainly not, but it's about how it makes me feel.
Yeah, and it is, like, I know, I think that was like my biggest struggle during that long period of rehab, is like, I think I would have felt very differently about that, like if I'd been allowed to walk for exercise, because so much of it is just being outside. I just like being outside, and, like having that period of time, like probably the best part of that is I did a lot of sort of like swimming in the bay. So at least you're outside there, but, there's a lot of like jumping fish, mosquitoes. So, like, Now I'd probably be more likely to go, and I actually just had an X-ray on my leg today, so I'll find out what's the go on Monday. But it's one of those, that experience is so good because now when things like that occasionally pop up, like, I don't have any fear about it anymore, because it's like, oh, it's cool. Like I'll hop on the bike for a bit. I'll go for a swim. I'll go to the gym. It'll get better. And I also know that fitness comes back a lot faster than what you think it will. And so, you've had that experience, so but yeah, like that, my favorite thing is just all of the things I get to see when I'm out there, like whether it be pelicans or water or sunshine or trees or, like it's just such a great way to start the day, that I think that was also, I think, what really suffered during that period of rehab is I felt it was so much more challenging to be creative because all of my good ideas happen when I'm running.
Yeah, I can relate to that one. I can totally relate to that. And I do have to say, I love your scene on my run photos. I always think, gosh, you have such a beautiful place to run around. So I love that you share that, because I see nice things on my run, but not quite as nice as what you see.
Yeah, I mean, it is just like such, and I think that was also like the hard thing about like when all of the restrictions came into place, is it was like quite uncomfortable to go down to Ballina because people were really nervous, and like the coastal path there gets quite crowded. So at a certain point I was like, it's probably better to just run at home where it's a lot more secluded, and like you can pretty much run 20 Ks and not see anyone, so it's nice now to, sort of be able to go back, and people feel like, because up here there haven't been any cases, so people feel a lot less like you're invading their space, with which is always, it was always a bit of a weird thing anyway, because it's like you're out here too, so
yeah. I know.
What are we talking about? So yeah, and you've been marathon training this year?
That was the goal and the plan, but obviously COVID put a kibosh on that. But this year I really wanted to focus on marathon and just do some really marathon specific training. And for the last sort of 4 years or so when I've been running, I've also been doing, probably even longer actually, I've also been doing CrossFit. So I actually finished up CrossFit in December, which is a really hard choice because I loved it so much. I love the people. The community was amazing. But just finding the combination of time and recovery, and because I'd started going to a running group 2 mornings a week early in the city, and finding trying to put everything in, and with my work and family, that something sort of had to give. And I really wanted to my PB for my marathon is my first marathon ever, which is sort of funny because I didn't have a Garmin. I ran with my headphones in and listening to Map My Run, just telling me my every K and that sort of stuff, and had no idea. And I think I had one gel and maybe 2 drinks along the whole way. So it's amazing what a naive runner can do. I would love.
It is funny though, because like my best marathon was, I was up at the Gold Coast and planning to run the half, but I got laryngitis and I was really sick, and I was like, well, I'm not going to like run a fast time in the half because I'm just not feeling good enough to run at that intensity, and I kind of don't want to run it easy because I've done an easy, like a half marathon on the Gold Coast at an easy pace with friends before, so it's kind of not anything new, and I've done all of this training and all of these 30k runs, and I'm like, I'll just like enter the marathon and just like run it slower, and then it's still like a new experience. And that was my marathon. And it's like, and I think a lot of it is like just not having any expectations. So I was just like, well, I don't know what pace I should run here because I'm not like feeling crash hot. So like, I'll just kind of like go at what feels good. And then I just kind of like hung on to that, and it was good.
It's so amazing.
And you just cannot pick it with marathons.
No, you can't. You cannot at all. So my PB is sort of like 3:11 high. And so last year at Shepparton, I did 3:18. But Shepparton was a it was a great experience and great track, but because it was a small event, I was the lead female for pretty much 40 Ks, and as a consequence, my first half was way too fast, and so it was not well paced. And had I paced myself a little better, I would have come. So I came in at 3:18. I could have come in well better, but like I really sort of blew up towards the end. Lots of learning lessons. You think after running a few marathons, but each marathon is different though, because like this was a different circumstance. And at one point I didn't really know where I was going and it wasn't well assigned. So I was sort of having a mini freak out, and so I started running really fast to try and see if I could catch up to someone in front of me. And so like all little things, that you just don't know. And so my goal was to do Gold Coast this year, which obviously didn't happen. There was going to be a big crew from my running group going up. So it would have had such a lovely feel to it. And obviously I would have hopefully been able to find a pacer group to sit in with, because I did do my half marathon PB I ran at Sandy Point in 2018 by sitting in on a pacer group. It was the first time I've ever sat in on a pacer group, and I really liked that experience because I could just sit in behind for such a long time and not have to worry about the pace, which is what I like to do. And then sort of towards the last 5Ks, I did sort of look and thought, I think his gun time and net time and stuff are going to be a bit different. I need to push it a little bit harder to make sure I get the time that I wanted, and sort of did. So this year I did start training, and I actually wanted to do a lot of longer runs this year. So prior to sort of COVID coming in, I was running pretty much 30 Ks every weekend on my long run. And then Gold Coast came and went, and then it was hopeful that Melbourne in October would be hopefully going ahead in some form. But unfortunately, obviously that has not happened either. So I've still kept training as if I'm going to be doing a marathon. The plan that I had written up for me was sort of aimed at trying to do the best that I can within that hour limit, and even with an additional bit of treadmill running. So on Saturdays, for example, I'm doing I'd never done one before, but like an up-tempo run, so sort of a steady pace, then half marathon pace, then steady pace. And I found those pretty challenging but sort of fun because they're sort of new to me. And so I think for every 2 weeks, I'm sort of, I think I started at like the tempo part was 15 minutes, then to 20, then 25. And so this Saturday it's up to 30. And so I've sort of gradually built. And, it's one of those ones where I go to bed on a Friday night thinking, oh God, am I actually going to be able to stick at 30 minutes for the tempo pace, because I have a little bit of fear about it. But I sort of like that, because then when I go and, I've so far I've done it, but I'll talk about some I haven't done during the week though. But I have been able to do it. The feeling of just surprising yourself that, hey, wasn't sure I could. And where I'm running now, like normally I would not choose where I run it at the moment because it's not ideal. It's not flat. It has it's slightly undulating. So I have to really vary my pace for the downhill and the uphill and all that sort of stuff. But I sort of see that I'm trying really to embrace that and not focusing on that, what could I be doing and what's his pace really and all this sort of stuff. But I'm really just trying to embrace it. This is just a different form of training. And so, no, it's not on the smooth track that I'd be running on normally and how I would do it or whatever it is, but just trying to really embrace it. It's been interesting because the plan, and this is where you should actually stick to a plan, because the plan obviously was built with me not doing 2.5 to 3 hours or 2.5 hours on a Sunday. So I have Friday off. I have an up-tempo run on the Saturday, and then Sunday would be just an hour steady. But because I've had the treadmill, I've been doing at least 2, if not a bit more. Then Monday I've got a recovery run. Then Tuesday I go into the workout, and I found that probably because I've pushed it too much and the plan wasn't written for this, I've really struggled to quite hit the paces on the Tuesday workouts as I should. So that's and that's where that's why the plan is written that way. But because I got the treadmill and I'm so passionate, I love the long run. So I've got what's on this Tuesday is quite challenging. So I'm thinking I might pull back the run on this Sunday so that I can really try and actually hit some of the paces that I need to on Tuesday, because that's why people who write the plans, they know way more about running than I do, because I must admit, I don't, I can see a lot of work in the plan. I'm sure this is the work that you put in your plans too, that there is thought behind why this day is this and why that day is that. Whereas sometimes I just get so in love with just the running that I will just run and run, and I'm quite happy to push myself hard. And that is good up to a point until you push yourself too hard. And then you actually, the whole thing, more is not always more. Sometimes less is more. And I have to remind myself about that as well.
Yeah, I mean, it is interesting too, because I have running coach. I don't write my own plan. And so like I'm probably more probably even more hesitant about like moving days around. Like sometimes I've been like, oh, like I've got this on and, like I could move this. And I'm like, yeah, but I know that it's because I have a similar schedule in that mine always pretty much follows the same thing as like Monday is recovery. And then I have like a hard workout on Tuesday. And then I do like medium long run Wednesday and then a couple of easy days. And then I do like a tempo run on Saturday and long run on Sunday. So it's pretty much always the structure of the week. And so there have been times when I've been like, oh, it's like it would be good if I could swap these days around. I'm like, yeah, but then it like throws out like my recovery
yes
for the rest of the week. So as much as possible, I don't sort of move things around too much, but it is, I find, also really good having like that hard workout like on the Tuesday, because it's not like you kind of have that easier day on the Monday when you're getting into your week, but it's still early enough in the week that you've got all of the mental energy and attention for doing something hard.
Oh, completely agree. Because I think a lot of those hard workouts, it's a lot of mental energy because you can talk yourself in or out of them. Like the other Tuesday, I was like I was quite worried about whether I was going to hit the paces or not. And while I was probably, a few seconds off for the paces, at one point, for the first time in a long time, I thought, I'm not even really training for anything. I could just step off right now. And then I went, why do you want to step off? That's just ridiculous. Like even if I don't hit the paces, this is still a really good workout. So just keep damn well going, right? And as soon as I just went, I don't care about the paces, I'm just going to push hard and see what I can get, it actually started to feel a whole lot better. Like, because it was just, I just built it up so big. And when I first started to find it hard, the initial thing was, oh, I might just step off. And it's like, you don't step off. What are you talking like this for? Just keep going. And then once I just went, okay, I'm accepting that this is not going to hit the exact paces, but you know what? It's going to be all right. And I'm still going to get a good workout from it. And it felt so much better. So, yeah, I think the whole mindset thing, especially with the sessions that you need, I think having that earlier in the week, so you've got the mental energy to have that argument with yourself at least, the right side of me won.
I had this almost the same argument the other week. It was like I had this workout to do. We were down to 0 cars, so I couldn't drive somewhere flat to do it, so I had to do it here. So I spent probably way too long the night before working out as flat a route as I could come up with locally to do this I was like 2 kilometre on, 1 kilometre off efforts. And like had started on this route and I was like, I cannot, like I'm way too in my head about this. Like I'm way too kind of like focused on like what the paces are. Will I be able to hit them? Will I not be able to hit them? What does it mean if I don't hit them? Like blah, 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 blah. And then I'm like, right, I'm going to go and do this on the hill route, so that I can completely get out of my head about like what pace I'm running. And so I did that. And the interesting thing was like not so much the first interval, because that there's a fair amount of uphill in the first interval. The other ones were kind of up and down, and they were actually faster than what I would normally run on flat. So it just sort of goes to show you, like once you get out of your head and out of the idea of like what you can run, like things will just happen. And then it ended up being like a way more enjoyable run, because I was just like, as soon as you introduce hills, it's like, I know I can't go any faster than this.
Yeah.
Like I know it, whereas on flat, sometimes I'll have this thing of like, is this enough? Could I go faster? Like, because potentially there's a lot more questions, whereas you introduce a new level of difficulty, I have very few questions.
Agreed. And hills are just such a beast. Like, I sort of will run, like even running steady, like, I look at it and I think, gosh, my steady run should be so much actually quicker than that. But when when I maybe have like over sort of, the 10K, I've sort of done 250, 300 meters elevation. It's like, it's all right. It's fine. Just chill it out. Doesn't matter. So the mindset thing, and I think And I think sometimes it's been really good for me not to go to the places where it is a bit easier and a bit flatter to run, because it's a whole different challenge to your body and to your legs when you've sort of really got to hammer it up those hills, just sort of, you know, trying to keep at a reasonable pace, and but, you know, and just thinking about, is this effort right? Is this effort right? And that's what sort of been my mantra on some of my runs around the hills. Is the effort right? Because you can feel the effort. You know whether or not you're really pushing yourself and how much is left. And sometimes when you're going up a hill, you know that there's just nothing left, that this is what you've got. And I think that is and I'm really trying to learn to run a lot more to feel now. Like it's hard, but and it's like I can get really caught up in paces, but especially on my easy runs and my steady runs, I'm really trying to go as much as I can by feel, and just really work by feel. Do you do any runs by feel or heart rate, or you're all pace-based, Zoe?
No, like most of I've been working with a new coach since about March. So it sort of like happened like right when like all of the COVID stuff happened. And so he looked at what I'd done in the past, which was very pace-based. Like probably the easy runs probably weren't pace-based, but everything else is very pace-based. So he's been doing a lot of stuff which is like to feel, or
Gotcha.
to, you know, some of the tempo stuff I will tend to just pop on be in the heart rate zone for that, because that just sort of makes it easier for me. But a lot of it is like easy run to feel, or it's like it will be like a progression run, but it's like start very easy, and then the next one is a little bit faster than that, and then the next one is a little bit faster than that, and finish at kind of like a steady pace, you know, all of that sort of stuff. And I think that a lot of the workouts are more like, this is an effort. So it's like whatever you feel like you can sort of like do on the day is what ends up happening. So there's some stuff that's kilometers, some stuff that's time. And that's actually been really, really good, because it's just allowed for, there's been like quite a lot of variance in that, in terms of like what it would look like on any given day. And I think also having it be like the workouts often being effort based, I used to find myself like on easy run days when like maybe I did something that was around like, you know, like 7-minute pace or whatever, thinking like, man, like this doesn't feel that easy. And like I'm supposed to run intervals at like 4:30 pace tomorrow. Like how is that possible? And you can almost like psych yourself out in like going too fast on the easy run to give yourself some kind of sense of confidence that you are actually a person who can run that pace on a workout day. And yeah. You know, like, so it's just sort of having to step back from that a little bit. So it's actually been really good. I always have the like the chest strap on for my runs, but I don't always look at it. But yeah, I mainly use it for probably more so tempo, and more so like the continuous stuff. Like if I'm doing, you know, like 5-minute intervals or something like that, like that's not really going to help me in the first half. Like by the time you get to the second half, it will, because your heart rate's elevated enough that it'll go back up pretty quickly. But it just has allowed me to kind of like go, okay, like I think I know what tempo is, but it just sort of has that confirmation like, no, you're going fast enough. This is enough effort. You can just like hang out here.
Yeah. Oh, that's nice. It's good to know. I haven't got a heart rate monitor, but that's definitely on my Christmas wish list this year, because my wrist one, it's all over the shop. So I'm definitely going to get myself like a heart rate monitor.
The difference between like, because like mine has a wrist one too, and it will often, like on the few times when I've like run without the chest one, like it's been out of battery or whatever, the wrist one will tend to show my easy runs as like way higher than normal. So it wouldn't be unusual if I go run on the wrist for it to say that I averaged like 145 or something on an easy run. Whereas if I have the chest on, it'll probably say like 120, 130. So like
Yeah,
a big
good.
difference.
That's huge,
And then
really. That's out of
if I'm
different.
doing,
That's in different zones and stuff. So I mean, it's a very
yeah,
big difference in what that run is doing at those heart rates.
and the tempo one is often suppressed. So, like, I've attempted to do like threshold type heart rate for a tempo run on the wrist before and would really struggle to get it over 150. So it seems to, I think the wrists one tend to drift more towards the middle. And so I find that, like with the chest one, like I can say take the first 10 minutes or whatever to get my heart rate up to, like 165, 170, whatever it is. And then it will pretty much just stay there. Like I can pretty much very easily have the heart rate stay within like 1 to 2 beats per minute without really like changing much. And that just sort of like takes a lot of that, again, just like that decision making out of it. It's like, oh, it's saying this, but is it really this? Should I be going faster? Or, and so particularly on those ones, like sometimes I've done those 10-kilometer sort of like tempos and I'm like, I actually want this to be like more like a time trial. And then it's like, just like go out and just keep getting faster until I can't get faster anymore. And then you don't really need the heart rate for that. But for other ones, I've been like, no, I feel like I need something like a little bit more pulled back. And so then I can basically go, okay, I want to start, have like the first kilometre, I want to be sitting on 165. And by the time I finish kilometre 10, I want to be sitting at 175. And it is really smooth and there's not jumping around, which just makes it so much easier to just do and have a run where there's like zero chance of you blowing up.
Yeah. I think that's really crucial. So that's definitely going to be on my list.
So we should probably talk about your new project. When did you start looking at getting into the drinks market?
Yeah, it's a very large divergence for me, but the last couple of years I've been wanting to sort of, try something different because I think, I've been doing some of the same stuff online for a couple of years now, and I really felt that I really wanted to try something different and something that was more product-based, wasn't like necessarily related to me. So my courses and things tend to be a bit more related to me. And I sort of came up with the idea probably about last August. And I was doing some contract work outside of the home as well as doing my planning with kids and plan and present stuff. And so I didn't really have time to act on it. But when I decided to finish up the contract work at the end of the year, I thought this is what I'll work on for 2020. I think I had time to really become really quite passionate about an idea of a drink that would sort of really help women adapt to stress and be something that was actually going to be beneficial when you drink and you feel better after it, and it would sort of give you take the edge off when you sort of want to, but not have any of those sort of side effects or repercussions that something like a glass of wine or something like that might have. So I really started working full gear on it in January, and my goal had actually been to have the Possible campaign, the crowdfunding campaign, up and running in June, but there was a number of challenges, like because it is quite a new style of drink, like it's a functional beverage, which means, yes, it's a drink, but it has a function too. So like a sports drink's a functional beverage, like kombucha's a functional beverage, that sort of stuff. And the food standards code that drinks fall under is sort of really quite specific about what you can have in an energy drink, for example, but there's some real greyness around other sort of functional beverages, which like mine is. So I did have some ingredients in there at first that I couldn't, so we had to retest. And then, of course, with COVID, that threw a spanner into the works as well, because the people that I'm working with are in Ballarat, and there is the head of the beverage maker. He is based in Bentley, but we were in 5K bubbles and all that sort of stuff. So it has taken what felt like forever, because I've wanted to work, because I felt, when you get a really good idea and you really like it, and you're very passionate about it, you just want to click your fingers and have it all done. So it's felt like it's taken an eternity. But the reality is, it's really from like idea to launching it has been only just over a year. So that's, for something like this, it's a pretty quick speed, and it is like a new thing in the Australian market. So like even the beverage maker has never made anything like that before, and I guess the great thing about having a partner like I have, they're a small startup as well, is that they're really supportive, and like they've filled in lots of gaps for things that I don't know, because this is by far sort of like the most challenging situation I sort of put myself into work-wise, because it's such a new area. I've had to just, go through so many new things. But I really wanted to keep pushing through, because, when you have that gut feel, and I have done, I've done a lot of sort of, small group research with different groups and used my blog and sort of surveyed my readers, but my gut just tells me keep working, because this is really good and it works and it's helpful. So it's sort of, even though when it's got hard and I wanted to just lay down, put my head on the desk and just think I can't do this anymore, I've just had this just keep going. It's good. It's gonna be worth it. So it's been exciting to work on it, and it has been a really nice distraction when I have been stuck at home for so long. At least I've actually had something that I really love working on. Like it's sort of really, I get up and I look forward to working on it. Not that I don't like my planning with kids work, but this is something really, really different, and it's because it's creating something really quite new that I'm actually, it's a physical product, which is quite different than what I've done before. So it's, as well as it's challenging, it's a bit like running after a hard workout. It gives you that energy. Like working on this while it's hard, it still does actually give me that sort of feedback of positive energy, which is great.
Yeah, and it is interesting because when you sent it to me, like I was like, oh, this is amazing, and it's like such a good idea. I'm sort of thinking about going, there is nothing like this, and like, why is there nothing like this? Like, it seems like such a needed thing in terms of, like promoting, stress management and relaxation, but also not including a lot of the negative things that you would sort of like put into your body in the name of relaxing. Like if you're talking about alcohol or, or like super sugary drinks or whatever. And I think that this has also probably been like one of my sort of like big game changer purchases over the last, actually, I think it was at present, but over the last couple of years is I got like one of the soda streams.
So good.
Which I just do with like plain water, and then I'll add like a splash of juice or something in it like that, because I just really love fizzy things.
I love fizzy things too.
I just like, I don't want to be like having like loads of sort of like have it be like a soft drink thing, particularly because like my teeth are notoriously like bad genetically. So that's like anytime I go see them, they're like, do you drink a lot of soft drink? And I'm like, I really don't.
Yeah, that's hard. I've got one kid who has teeth like that. The enamel has just never been great since he was born, and it is a real struggle. But it is interesting because, like in America, there's a couple of drinks that are not dissimilar. But adaptogenic herbs, it's one of those things now. Like now that you probably find now, Zoe, that you will find it's really becoming like, I guess, an increasing trend, because I think there is such a big awareness now on how useful and helpful they are. And it's one of those things like, kombucha, what is old becomes new again. These adaptogenic herbs have been around for such a long time. And I had one person who pledged, she emailed me and she goes, I used to take that like 20 years ago, and I know it used to make me feel better. Why did I ever stop taking it? Like, it's one of those things and to put it in a form, I guess the thing that I'm trying to do with Adapt Relax as a drink is like, you can take this in pill form and there would be like a supplement that you could take. But what I'm trying to do is also sort of replace some of that end of the day ritual that people have. And that's why when I sort of made the drink, and I literally used my soda stream when I made the first few formulations at home, because I wanted it to be bubbles and I wanted the color to be appealing as well. Like, because it wants to look like, invite you to drink it. Not only is it going to be good for you, but it wants to taste nice, but it doesn't want to be so loaded up with sugar. So and I really wanted to also have like an Indigenous flavour, because I just wanted a nod to Australia. So going with like something like a native strawberry gum extract, it's not overpowering. So it's not like bubble gum or massive strawberry flavour, because it comes from basically the leaves of the tree. It actually just is really aromatic, but gives it that sort of a slight sweet berry flavour without thinking, oh, this is so sickly, I can't finish the drink. Because even if you use, this is 0 calorie and 0 sugar, and it's just using monk fruit juice, which is a natural sweetener. Even natural sweeteners can give like an overly sweet taste if it's ramped up too much. So it was a real fine line of getting some sweetness so that it would be palatable, but not sort of going too over the top. So you think, oh, I can't finish that bottle off. That's too much.
Yeah, and it is definitely like, because I've had kombucha before, and it is like that as a drink is quite polarizing for people because it does have quite a strong flavor. So yeah. I've definitely had people say to me, I don't know how you drink that. It tastes like vinegar. And also has a like the kids will look at me like if I have sort of kombucha in there, they're like, that looks really gross. Like drinking.
I make my own kombucha, and
my it's daughter also being sort of. Oh, sorry, you go.
No, I make my own kombucha, and most of the kids will have a drink of it, but my daughter, because she's seen it and she's seen the SCOBY and she's seen all the hangy bits that come from it before you do the straining process, she just out and out refuses to even taste it. Just out and out refuses to even taste it, which I find it's a whole mind over matter. I'm sure if I'd slipped it to her and she'd never seen it, that she would have a very different feel about it.
Yeah, but some things I guess you just can't unsee at
all. Exactly.
And I guess to like with I think it's also unfortunate with some of those drinks is like, because people don't often read labels. Like if I'm buying kombucha, like I'll get the sort of like the ginger one, which is basically doesn't have like barely any additives in it.
Yes.
But they're selling the things that are basically soft drinks as the same as that. So it's confusing for people. So unless you actually like read the labels on everything, like they've got like a cola one now.
Yes, I know. You have to read very hard, and when you look at it, it's because there's such a huge range of what are deemed natural sweeteners, but are actually artificially created. So, but because they're created from natural byproducts and stuff, so there's such a fine line between all of that. So I really wanted to have as few ingredients as possible in my drink, because that way, there's nothing worse than looking at a label of a drink, because I'm a massive label reader, and you look and you think, I think this looks good, but there's so many ingredients in this. Why do you have to have so many ingredients? Like, why is there so many? One of the things, we added rosemary extract because we needed to make sure that it was going to be shelf stable and the pH levels were right. And that was, while more expensive, it was like the best sort of natural preservative that I could put in there to make sure it did the things. And to me, it was like the most natural product that I could do. But there was other ones that I could have used that have these names. You think, oh no, I don't want to use that. But it is confusing as a consumer, and that's why I've sort of really tried to make sure it's as simple as possible. But part of this is because adaptogenic herbs are new. There's definitely a massive education piece for me to get, so people can get their head around it and understand the benefit of it. And that sort of stuff takes time. But I think because I'm so passionate about it, I'm used to writing on the blog. I've sort of already started to write quite a bit for the website that I'll set up once the possible campaign finishes. That I know that people who are really interested will start to do that bit of the reading and they'll get the benefit. So for me, it's such a worthwhile investment of my time to sort of put that education piece in.
So with the adaptogenic herbs, what would be like the main functional qualities of them?
There's sort of two key ones. There's Susanderberry, and it's really known to help reduce anxiety and cortisol levels. And as you know, the first thing that happens when you get stressed is your heart rate starts to just jump up a bit, and so do your cortisol levels. So they'll naturally help to decrease that. And it sort of does it in, I guess there's sort of a two-way process that adaptogenic herbs work. It will sort of do it in the moment, but as you start to take adaptogenic herbs on a more regular basis, in any form, it doesn't have to be in like my drink form, you might start taking a supplement or whatever you do, it actually starts to get your body actually like in a stronger position. So instead of like feeling slightly stressed and your body kicking straight into fight or flight and your cortisol starting to shoot up automatically, it actually takes, I guess, more stress before you kick off that response. It starts to build up. And you can actually absorb a lot more stress than what you would ordinarily do. And then even when it does kick off, adaptogenic herbs, they actually help you sort of come back to homeostasis quite a bit quicker than without it. And that's, that's sort of the longer term benefits of those. But in the initial sort of impact, it really does just help to sort of bring things down. And then the other one, which is Panax ginseng, which you'll often see in a number of drinks already on the market. And it's mainly because it actually helps sort of improve mood and cognition. So often drinks that are aimed about like focus will often, and even some of those energy drinks will also use Panax ginseng, because it does help to sort of give you that feel better feeling and get you feeling cognition's a bit better. And that's why one of the reasons why I've sort of added it. So towards the end of the day, especially for like parents, like you're often just switching into different shifts. You've been working all day and then you've sort of got to go and do another one. And so while you want to be relaxed, you can't necessarily completely zone out. And it has the benefit of just, helping you absorb that stress, and keeping your mood at a higher level as well. And then there's another ingredient which is not an adaptogenic herb, but which is an amino acid, which is L-theanine. And it's got amazing research in it, which shows that it actually does help you feel relaxed but not drowsy. Because the last thing I wanted to do, because I know at my 4 or 5 o'clock at night or 6 o'clock at night, I can't afford to want to hop on the couch and go have a nap, because I've just got to, make sure everyone's got their homework done, cook the meal, get everyone ready for school the next day, and then I can crash. So it actually is, normally you'd find it like in green tea, for example. And so that's why when you have a cup of green tea, you don't tend to get the jitters like you do when you have a cup of coffee, because the L-theanine in the green tea actually helps to sort of to balance out some of the effects of caffeine. So L-theanine often you'll see paired with caffeine. This drink has no caffeine because we don't want that this time of night. But it actually, you're just getting that. It's basically they've extracted it so you don't get any of the green tea caffeine, but you've just got the pure amino acid that actually sort of does have a really nice relaxing effect. And it's been coming, if you have a look, especially on a lot of sort of sports drinks and stuff, in terms of recovery, L-theanine's becoming quite popular as an additive, because it's actually really pure, like it's got no calories, no sugar or anything like that, and it's actually really, really effective at what it does.
Yeah, it is. I have heard about like people who, like more so like people who are not having their caffeine through coffee, but are just having like a dose of caffeine like as a supplement, will combine it with that, because they're saying like it just really like smooths them out, so you don't get that really like hard sort of feeling that you might get from caffeine. And like I had been going along with this theory, like I'd started having some tea at night, just as a kind of like a nice relaxing drink really. And I had like just what I had in the cupboard was like a green tea and lemon one. And a friend of mine was like, oh, like maybe don't have that before bed, because, like the caffeine will keep you up. And I'm like, like I could have like a cup of coffee before bed and go to sleep. It'd be fine. Which has always been the same. I've always been like that. And the next day I was like, okay, like I'm obviously getting older, because that did impact my sleep. And so I sort of had to switch to like a herbal tea, like a non-green tea, if it was before bed, because I did find that I was having just like much more disturbed sleep, and it's like just another aging nail in the coffin.
Oh, I know. And like it's even like for me, like I'm not anti-alcohol at all. Like I don't drink a huge amount, but I certainly am quite happy to have a drink. But even like 1 or 2 drinks for me, the negative effect that it has on my sleep is remarkable. Like I wake up way too early. I generally wake up in the middle of the night at some stage. And I never used to do that when I was younger. It's just like since I've got old that all these things start to bother me.
Yeah, I mean, it's like I forget what podcast I was listening to. But I was listening to a couple of guys talking. They're like, like in your 20s, like being hungover lasts for like one day, and then you get to your 40s, and all of a sudden it's like a week.
I'm a weak hangover person now, and I think then you tend to drink less because you're scarred by that weak hangover process, which means then it just becomes this like this is self-prophesizing exercise that you drink less, therefore you're not used to it, and then you have some more if you go out, and then it's just like that even felt even worse. So it just becomes quite self-fulfilling after a while, I think.
Yeah, and for like particularly for runners, I think like the great thing about, and like for me when I've been looking for an alternative, it's like one, like you want things that are like adding to the system, but also like you spend so much time just trying to keep hydrated.
Yes, exactly.
And like the amount of times I've been like, I have to rehydrate so that I can dehydrate.
Yeah.
In like about 5 minutes once it's 6 o'clock on a Friday night or whatever. Although that in a lot of ways has been cured by my coach always schedules like workouts on Saturday. So there is no,
I know.
there is nothing that happens on Friday night. It's like,
no.
Yeah, unless I want that to feel really bad, that's not happening.
I'm exactly the same. And that's the thing actually for runners as well, because like while like, I do talk about this, helping people stress, like training is a stress, and your body just treats stress the same way, whether it's stress from having a fight with your partner, whether it's financial stress because you've lost your job, or whether it's stress for training for a marathon. Your body just sees it all as the same thing. It's all stress. So, and there's actually good stress too, like, promotions for me, working on the drink itself has been quite stressful in lots of parts, but it's actually sort of still been good stress. It's kept me going. It's, it's the whole, working towards a goal stress, what they call eustress. It's really positive. But it's still, if it keeps going and going and going, combined with everything else and COVID and all those things on top, you don't necessarily have to feel stressed out to feel the benefit from taking any of these, even if you want to take them just as a pure supplement. The adaptogenic herbs will actually help, help you absorb and, and be in a better position to then, do the next workout and that sort of stuff, because stress is stress, whichever source it comes from.
Yeah, I mean, like particularly like I've noticed that like this year has had like so much more stress from like, and we've been relatively lucky in that we haven't been to this point financially impacted because of like between a combination of like most of our stuff being work from home and and like a bit of government support and all of that, so it hasn't been like a huge financial impact, but just the like you have the potential like threat of the recession, which seems looming at this stage. You have like the environmental stress of even like just going to the supermarket and seeing people wearing masks is often a confronting experience. Like it makes you feel good because people are doing the right thing, but it's also this very alien experience. And then there's also the sort of like unknown of like, is this going on for a few more months or is this going on for a couple of years? Like no one really knows. And, and then you add on to that, like the stress of like my kids only had to do a little bit of working from home, but they found that quite stressful and everything else. And then it's no surprise that, that even when like you say your like regular training hasn't changed, you feel like you're recovering a whole lot less.
Oh, I can completely agree with that. Like I, obviously launching the product, and there was a few other things going on in my life and stuff as well. I was actually just Thursday, yesterday should have been a steady run. I just didn't have it in me. I just was shattered. I hadn't got enough sleep because there'd been a few things that happened family-wise and stuff that I had to take care of. And it was just like, I just can't do that today. I'm just going out. I'm not looking at my watch and I'm just going to, run. And, I ran 6-minute Ks and that's what I had to do. And I think because there is so many different compounding layers of stress and, to me, like yesterday's run was a sign that I'm maturing as a runner, because previously I would have just gone and stuck to the plan and pushed myself so hard. But it's just like, no, I just can't do that. My body just doesn't want to do that. I really wanted to run because I wanted the feeling of just being out and doing the run, but I didn't want to push myself to the edge. So it was just really about listening. And I think just just acknowledging that there is a lot going on. And even though if you know, I don't like, I'm not one of those people that's nervously worrying about COVID all the time, but you're right, like, you know, thinking about like even simple things for us in Melbourne, it's like making sure we're within the 5K, making sure we've been to the shops by the certain time because we've got a curfew. Thinking about all those things all the time, they are actually quite stressful and all do add up, even if you don't necessarily think that you're feeling stressed. And I can see it in myself sometimes when, like, I know I haven't recovered as well, and or I might be just a little bit short with the kids, because it's just underlying, and the uncertainty, I think, is the big thing, because uncertainty, and you know, I sort of wrote a newsletter yesterday about one of the main strategies that I'm doing to cope with, I guess, the uncertainty of it all, is focusing on what I can control. So I can control the fact that I can run for nearly 2 hours now, and that's fantastic. If I spend all my time focusing on what I can't do, I find that makes me start to feel really out of control and feel like I don't have enough agency in my life. So to sort of just, sometimes I do. Sometimes I'll sit here where I'm talking to you and I'll look out my window and I just think, I want everything back to how it used to be. I want to get out. I want to go see my friends. I want to run with my running group. But I will feel that. And then I move on, because if all I do is focus on that, that just makes me actually feel quite worse about myself. And I just, not about myself personally, but I start to just feel really heavy. And I think people have asked me about it, like, not from Melbourne, and it just starts to feel really heavy after a while. So therefore, by focusing on positives, like, I've watched more Netflix in this lockdown because I've had a treadmill, and I've actually and to get through, I ran a half marathon on the treadmill the other weekend, and to get through it I watched a movie on the treadmill, so that was like a bonus. I would never watch that movie. So I feel like I've just got to look on those things that are sort of bonuses and are things that we can do now that we couldn't. So that's a step forward, because otherwise I think I almost talk myself into a more of a negative state, which puts me into that sort of stress cycle of then stressing out more about it. And then it just doesn't help me at all.
Yeah. And it is just like, I think that's exactly, you know, like how you have to deal with anything is, you know, like you give yourself space to feel it, but then it's like, okay, like I need to focus on the things that I can impact, the things that I can do, because there's usually loads and loads and loads of things that, you know, like, and like probably I haven't, last time I went for a run was on Tuesday, and I normally run every day, and just I think it might be a stress fracture. The doctor disagrees. He's like, he mansplained the difference between the bone and muscle to me, and I was like, oh my God. And it, you know, but I was like, I want to get it checked out, because when I went to the osteo, she said, I think that we could be in that territory, because she has like this little metal thing that she gets to vibrate on the bone, and at a certain point it hurt, whereas at other points it didn't. And so we're like, we'll get it checked out, because if it's not a fracture, then, you know, I can get somebody to do a whole bunch of soft tissue work. Yeah, so she did that sort of thing, and which is done before when I've had concerns, and it's always been pain-free. So the fact that there was like a little bit of pain with that vibration on the bone, she was like, let's get it checked out, and if it's clear, then I'll feel confident to go in with a whole bunch of like soft tissue work to like loosen up like everything on that lateral shin, and, you know, like hopefully sort of like get pain-free soon. But and like, I think that it's one of the great things about like having had periods of not running before is, like, I think a lot of people really fear that thing.
It's unknown.
Because obviously you don't get to do what, like, I would really love to be able to go for a run for sure. But it's sort of like, now I'm like, okay, well, what I can do is, like, I can swim very slowly, and, you know, like, I've got a bike in the garage. I can change up, like, I'm similar to you, like, I've sort of, with CrossFit, like, I go in for, like, I've switched to just like going in for PT, and they usually have one class a week that is just strength based, and I go to that one. But other than that, I don't do the WODs or anything.
Yeah.
And so, like, with this, I'm like, okay, if I get confirmed that it's a thing, that I could just increase my days at the gym a bit, you know, like get in the pool, do that thing. And it's such a big difference to like focusing on those things I can control, and then sort of look at, like, you know, like normally when I'm running 7 days a week, what are the things that I most skip over? Like mobility and yoga, and I could do like all of that sort of stuff, and I could, like sort of do a whole bunch of like batch cooking. So, like so that I've got like a lot of my meal planning, and it makes such a big difference to your, like your mindset and how you deal with it, and I think that it was really good having that experience, because I look at it like in the past, I would look at it as something that I tolerated until I was well enough to go running again. And now I kind of look at it like this is like this awesome opportunity to work on all of the things that I kind of let slide because I like running more.
It's so good. It's so good. I love that attitude. And I think attitude really is the way you get through these things. Like, it's the way you get through injuries, staying sane. It's the way you get through, being restricted in lockdown like Melbourne. It's sort of, you have to make the choices on, what is it? You can only choose, you can't control things, but you can choose how you respond to them. And I love that response. I think it's a great response. And, and I think it's a great example to those, because I think for often people, when they get injured with running, especially if you're, only a couple of years in, you do think it's like the end of the world. I remember when I got my injury, I was like, I cried and cried for days. I mean, I was like 6 weeks out from my first marathon and I was devastated.
Yeah.
But now I know I'd have a very different outlook if it happened. And I think that happened because I've had a few times where I haven't been able to run, and I know I've come back. Like, I know I've been able to come back and I've run better and run faster. And I think you need to remind yourself of those things to push yourself through when you start to get all those little bits of self-doubt and start to feel a bit sorry for yourself.
Yeah. And I mean, it is very, like, definitely, like, at the moment, I was like, well, like, what am I training for, really?
No races
going on. So having, like, not having that kind of feeling of disappointment, like, oh, things are going really well and I've got this race in 4 weeks and now I'm not going to be able to do it. Like, having that out of the equation makes it 10 times easier to deal with. And also having had a complex injury, which was like 4 or 5 months of rehab, like, I remember even at the time I was like, this would be so great if it was just like a stress fracture, because you stay off it and then you get better. And it's not like this kind of thing, like, actually you need to develop a shit ton of hamstring strength, which was a lot harder.
Absolutely.
And, so yeah, it definitely sort of like has that benefit of it. And it also is one of those things where I look at it, and it's probably like sort of splitting hairs, but I look at it as like not really an overtraining thing, if that's what it is, because like my volume hasn't dramatically changed over the last few years, but it's 100% an under recovery thing from like things associated with the current period of time, with just like so many more stresses. And
agreed.
Like so many and emotionally too, like I think that's under, like, people don't really think about it so much, but like a couple of weeks ago I had somebody who I grew up with passed away, which wasn't unexpected, but it was still a big shock. And I think it's really, and I look at that and I'm like, yeah, I'm not surprised that like a few things like built on one another, because even that emotional stuff, it has a really big impact on how you are physically. And oftentimes when you have a decent amount of capacity, you can kind of like muscle through that sort of stuff and not really adjust, but you probably should.
Oh, completely agree. And, if I look back over the history of my injuries, there's always been a culmination of things. Like, my first injury was definitely newbie running and just doing all of the wrong things. But if you take that one aside, there has been like lack of sleep through stress from work or stress from family situations or any of those sorts of things. And it comes back to the point that stress is stress, and our body just starts, it can only absorb so much before something gets a crack, and this time it might be, a bone literally for you, and I, fingers crossed. But I do get what you're saying, like, out of the injuries, like something like a stretch fracture is generally way more simpler than, some complicated tendon issue or something like that. So fingers crossed it won't keep you out for too long when you find your results out, Zoe.
Yeah. And like, particularly too, living up here, I'm always like the period of time where an injury would really piss me off is during winter.
Gotcha.
Because it's the most perfect time to run. And, you know, like it's sort of like, whereas at other times when I've gotten, had like injuries during summer, I'm like, could be worse.
Yep.
So yeah, it's like, I haven't had too many troubles with magpies this spring, but I have had to change like a couple of routes to like avoid some of the magpies that are a bit more territorial. Like a lot of the time,
frightening. They're so frightening.
But I have had felt a few wings on the back of my head, and before like I changed the routes, and I was like, why don't I remember this happening last year? And it's like, because last year I was doing like a whole heap of my running after the gym down in Ballina where it's like dark, so they're not up yet.
Yeah.
And also there tends to be less magpies near the water. Like you got sort of like more seabirds who don't have that many magpies down there. So yeah, and I was like, that's why.
Safer routes there for sure.
But yeah, so if people would like to check out you or like do their pre-order through the crowdsourcing campaign, what's the best place for them to go?
Yeah, so it's pozible.com, which is POZIBLE, and then it's /profile/adapt drinks, or you could just head to pozible.com and search for adapt drinks and it will come up.
All right, awesome. And I will link that up as well, so it's easy for people to find. And yeah, good luck with everything, because I'm just so sure like it's at the perfect time for something like this, and it's definitely something that I would use. And yeah, I think it's very exciting. I think it's just generally exciting that, you know, like I have often looked at like, it'd be like cool to do something, but you kind of like look at like manufacturing things like that, like in the past would have been such a massive barrier to entry. Yep. And now you have these sort of opportunities with working with other startups and like getting things going. And it's such an exciting time to be able to kind of like follow through on ideas now. It's so cool.
It is. And look, thanks so much for your support. I really appreciate it.
So how it's got like 2 weeks to go?
Yes. I think exactly, what have we got? 14 days left. So it's already nearly at halfway. So the first week of support has been just completely amazing. And so I've got another 2 weeks to try and raise the rest of my target, which, you know, I think I'm really confident I'll get there, because it's just about getting the word out, because when people hear about it, they seem to jump on board. So happy to have been here and to have chatted to you today. And thanks for letting me share about the product as well.
Thank you so much to Nicole for being so generous with her time on the podcast, and I just love talking to her about training and life and her new projects as well. She's always been such a huge supporter and incredibly generous with her time and her knowledge. So it was just a really cool thing to be able to talk to her about this recent project of hers. The crowdfunding campaign has about 9 days to go. So if you don't want to miss out on the pre-order, jump on that Pozible link, which is in the notes for this episode, or you can search for Adapt Drinks on pozible.com as well. And I will chat to you next time.